Hello, welcome to episode 9 of the Cult and Culture podcast, presented by Planet B. I'm Justin Pearson.
And I'm Luke Hinshaw.
And this episode features Martin Atkins, who is known for his drumming in bands such as Public Image Ltd, Ministry, Nine Inch Nails, Pigface, Killing Joke, Brian Brain, and probably some other stuff.
Probably a lot of other stuff.
Also, he's a teacher at SEA in Chicago. Writes a bunch of books like Tour Smart and Band Smart. He has a coffee thing happening, coffee bean roasting thing. I don't know. The dude's insane. He's got dolls now. So anyhow, we caught up with him. He does.
He does.
So yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up, listening to all of his music, and then at some point, we ended up collaborating on a track with him on the new Planet B album. So, so he's featured on the upcoming Planet B record, and we met up with him. He's also at a SEA in Los Angeles. Yep. And he was giving a lecture, so we just met up with him before. We went up to Los Angeles, recorded this podcast, and kind of dove into
that drive was brutal.
It was a brutal drive.
We actually missed him in his hotel and had to go meet him at the venue.
Yeah, which is understandable. It's LA and San Diego is becoming one big thing, I think.
Yep, and it worked out.
Yeah, it was awesome, and he, we also got to see him play drums and stuff too, and part of his lecture, which was fantastic. The dude rips. So yeah, it's an honor to be able to hang out with the dude, and it's an honor to have him on our record. Okay, cool. So here, without further ado, is the podcast. Hope you enjoy yourselves.
Bye.
Come boogeyman, come boogeyman, come boogeyman, come boogeyman.
Is it ready?
Yep.
Okay. So let's start with you and the beginning of your you. As Martin Atkins as we know it. I mean,
I'm a person, not a clothing line.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so let's talk about how you joined P.I.L, or what happened before that, or how that whole thing fell in your lap.
So, well, it didn't. But so before that, I was just a drummer in the north of England, and doing 8 shows a week, 7 nights, Sunday afternoons, backing strippers. So when punk hit, I started playing when I was 9, joined my first band when I was 11, and so I was at 16. I was like jaded, technically proficient, and perfect for punk.
Oh yeah,
which wanted to be like fuck proficiency, except Chris Spedding played guitar on some Pistol stuff. They needed proficiency, but with a fuck off attitude.
Sure.
So that was me. But I went down to London for some auditions. And
auditions for what?
Just
different things.
To not be in a band in the north of England.
Oh, sure. Okay.
250 miles, but it was one end of the country to the other. Spiritually, it's like New York, LA, Scotland, London.
Sure.
And so my dad arranged for me to have a ride to London with a moving company, and I did a bunch of auditions, and I had a ride back Thursday morning. I ran out of money by the Tuesday. I was in a pub. I just said to the barman, "Could you tell everybody in the pub I don't have any money? I don't have any way. Is there anybody I could stay with?" What was I, 16 or something? And so the morning the Wednesday, and I'm leaving the Thursday with this ride, I get Melody Maker, which came out in London on a Wednesday, everywhere else in the country on a Thursday. And there was an ad, it said, "Drummer required for band with rather well-known singer." I'm like, this is John's new thing. So I called the number. "Hello, Virgin Records."
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, okay, I'm your guy. I'm really good, and I don't give a shit. They're like, "Yes, you sound like you could be," but and they're like, "Auditions are Friday." I'm like, "Oh, I'm leaving Thursday. Can I have an audition tonight or tomorrow morning?" They're like, "No, auditions are Friday," and I'm like, "I can't do it." And I don't know what I could have done. There was no like PayPal or well, there might have been Western Union. I said, I have to go back to the north of England. And once I was in the truck, getting the ride home, I'm like, oh, I just fucked up. And so every mile going back to the north of England. So as soon as I got there, I told the guys I was in a band with, I'm moving to London, I'm through with this north of England shit. And he said, you're right, we'll move down with you. And for the next year and a half, I just kept calling Jeanette, Virgin Records. So, I got to know Jeanette Lee. And then she gave me a home number. She wasn't there one time. I ended up talking to her mum. So for 18 months, I was like, I worked really hard to stumble into that opportunity.
Sure.
Again. And they made it easy because they went through like 7 or 8 drummers.
So
in
you
18 months.
missed the Friday tryout then. You just randomly kept going back and being persistent.
Yeah.
Wow. So that inevitably changed your life.
Well, and they kept firing drummers.
Yeah.
Jim Walker left really quickly. They set fire to 2 drummers.
Literally?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And so at some point I'm thinking, oh, this is the job for me.
Yeah.
But I think because I felt like I was so close to having that chance, and it became a thing for me.
So why do you think you survived it, I guess, the tryout period that they were having? Because, well, maybe this is like weird speculation, but I feel like when you came into the picture, there was a huge shift in the way the band was sounding or, what it was producing.
Well, I mean, I'd love to say, yeah, but...
Well, I can say yeah for you, and then you...
But I think so one of the things that I'm looking at, and I'm trying to distance myself and not say, yeah, I was the shift. I think what happened, people are allocating all of this strategic. It was then that John decided P.I.L would be all about the drums. No, Keith was on heroin and Wobble quit.
Yeah.
So it's me and John.
Sure.
You've got drums and John.
Okay.
It wasn't like we thought this through. This was just carnage in front of us that we navigated.
Sure.
So I think if Nick Launay and I had presented John with some like, here we go, here's the track, boom, da, boom, boom, da, boom, da, boom, boom, wait for the tambourine, boom, boom, da. He would have been like, oh fuck, well let's get a bass player in here, right? But we presented him with Under the House Floor and Closed Walls, Banging the Door, etc.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we'll go with that.
Okay. And that was like, in retrospect, it's like the weirdest stuff of that time for a major label. Like, it doesn't make sense, I guess.
Right. And so I'm trying to navigate this part as well. There are people who are attributing all kinds of things to John who don't understand what we were doing or the situation. And all they know is to say, okay, John was the band leader, therefore assuming he went into the studio with, here's this song, Under the House. Martin, I want you to do triplets. Hit the... Nick, get ready with the flamenco hand claps. We're going to pan it left to right. Because that's what they... Maybe Bono does that. I don't know.
Sure.
But it was the opposite with P.I.L. And what John did, which nobody is talking about because everybody... And he's going along with this idea of like band leader.
Sure.
God bless him. But what he did was elbow the music business out of the way with his notoriety.
Oh, yeah.
And opened up this rare opportunity to be like, hey, we can do this. People will spend a few minutes listening to this. There's a chance here. The most recent version of that I can think of is when Trent did I Want to Fuck You Like an Animal. Well, I don't know what that song's called, but that's...
Sure, the part that sticks out.
If that was his first song, like, yeah, no one's playing it, mate. What are you doing? But he created the buzz that elbowed traditional ideas out. look, radio's going to play it, therefore, here's an opportunity to really push the envelope and be 10 times more notorious. And it's very similar, I think, to what John did.
Sure.
And you embroider some other stuff in there.
There was I remember when I was a little kid seeing you guys on American Bandstand.
Yeah.
Before I really even knew of the Sex Pistols, I don't know, I was maybe 10 or something. But I remember like seeing it and like you guys weren't playing and it was the weirdest thing. And I was like, it was like the first time I really saw like something. It was the first time I was probably ever exposed to like real punk attitude, you know. And I was like, damn, these people are like just fucking with the producers of the show. It was brilliant. But I wonder like how that happened on like on a mainstream level, like what the reaction was to that. Like people were probably like pissed, right? Like on the industry side of things.
Yeah. And so once again, I don't want to single-handedly destroy a vibe and a reputation that has served me well as a member of P.I.L from that time. But I don't think any of us really knew what American Bandstand was.
Yeah.
John might have, because he'd been over to the States a couple of times. He did a promotional trip with Keith, and he obviously did the Sex Pistols tour. But I remember walking onto the set of American Bandstand, and as we came through the gate at whatever the place was, I'm like, oh my God, they film the comedy Soap. I was blown away by that.
Yeah.
So we had no idea of what Bandstand was.
Yeah.
We had no idea who Dick Clark was.
Wow.
So, and of course, nobody played on Bandstand.
Yeah, but nobody knew that until that happened, right? I don't think anyone's ever done that before.
Really?
I don't think so, man.
Okay.
I really don't think anybody had ever done that. Where you could watch it and go like, they're not playing. It's just fucked.
Right. I mean, yeah, I saw a picture. I've got some stills tonight. There's a picture of me playing bass.
Yeah.
It's just like we just like gave up all pretense of, you know. Yeah, Wobble was playing the drums.
It's great though.
Yeah.
It's such a great performance. And then like not to jump around too much, but then like so you had left the band and then came back and did this is what you
No,
want.
I was fired. This is one thing. I started working on a timeline of my first, I think, 7 months. So it was Metal Box, Bad Baby, which was my audition.
Yeah, sure.
John P.I.L, Old Grey Whistle Test, which was live TV in England. Paris.
The John P.I.L thing never came out, right? It's not released.
No, it's released on something.
Okay.
It's on the plastic box on the 40th anniversary.
Yeah.
It's definitely been released a couple of times. So at the end, 2 weeks after the American tour, which is May 80, so September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, 8 months. Paris au Printemps was recorded but not released yet. Did the American tour. 2 weeks after I got home, Keith fired me.
Keith did?
Uh-huh.
Huh. What was the reason for that?
Well, I think he just thought I was a cunt. You know? But, I mean, because I had this work ethic from the north of England. Well, we do 8 shows a week, and we're 3,000 people at the Palladium in New York. We better play for 2 hours and give them value. You know? And Keith was on heroin.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand. He was destroying himself. He wasn't doing the band any favors. We just didn't. He was walking around eating bowls of custard, which you might as well have a sign on your head like junkie. You know, I can't eat solid food. You know, it just pissed me off.
Sure.
And he didn't like me either.
Wow. Okay.
So it was just like.
But so I mean, there was all this like, not this doesn't have to do with you necessarily, but like you know, you watch like Filth and the Fury, and Lydon is very outspoken about heroin addicts and Sid and stuff. So like, I wonder why he tolerated that in his next band, because that was sort of the demise of the Pistols. So it seemed like he wouldn't allow it a second time, or did he not know it?
Yeah, I mean,
I guess it's we can avoid that whole.
No, I don't have to avoid it. Keith has talked openly about it. I talked with him openly about it. I had the longest, best conversation I've had with him in 40 years 2 months ago.
Wow.
And it was heartbreaking to see, but it was also frightening just as a human, but it was also frightening as a person in that band everything was on a knife edge anyway.
Sure.
But yeah, that's a good question. Why wasn't John more involved with that?
Sure.
Certainly, and I have this whole section tonight about not being in P.I.L. So I go about my own business with my own little punk band, Brian Brain,
Yeah.
where my drums are on tape. And then I get asked back to come into the studio to work on the Flowers of Romance album. But I only have 2 days because I've got a second or third Brian Brain US tour booked. So they asked me back, but Keith was very... took great pains to let every journalist know I hadn't rejoined. I was just back as a session drummer, which, like, my point to that would be, well, I thought session drummers got paid. but I think one of the things that Keith was doing at this time, he fired me because I was an asshole in San Francisco on a radio interview. Said a bunch of stuff that was true, but I shouldn't have said it. But also, if P.I.L. wasn't a touring band, and after America they decided it shouldn't be,
Yeah.
then why did they need a drummer?
Yeah.
So they fired me, and they also saved £60 a week, which is what I was getting paid.
Oh, wow.
But that was kind of heartbreaking for me. And then to be asked back, I just puked my guts of my ideas and my creativity. It's very interesting to look back on it. All these ideas that Nick Launay helped, allowed, and encouraged to come to fruition.
Wow.
And after 2 days, I left that, got on a plane, and went to the States and did my Brian Brain
Yeah.
thing. So it wasn't until perhaps a year after that, when they moved to New York, that they asked me to rejoin while they were entrenched in recording in New York.
Yeah. For which album?
This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get.
But didn't he
/
fire everyone
commercial
except
song.
you? Because there's that video. It's just, isn't it just you like doing this weird shit and John singing and like like where's
Yeah,
the
but that was
band?
after that.
Yeah.
That was after that. There was a time in New York where it was me, John, and Keith. And then we had Pete Jones come over and play bass. And we did a bunch of shows as the four of us. We did Roseland, did Pasadena Civic,
The four of you. So wait, it was you, John,
Keith Levine,
Keith,
and Pete Jones
Oh, okay.
on bass.
Oh, okay.
And he played with Cowboys International. He played with Brian Brain, my band, and he's playing with Department S now, still playing. And so there's this whole mess around a Japanese tour, the first Japanese tour, where we had 10 shows booked in Tokyo and a shit ton of money, which we needed. And then Paul McCartney was busted with 8 grams of weed in Tokyo. And so that precipitated something called the Paul McCartney clause in all Japanese performance agreements. And so all of the money from a tour would be forfeit, along with expenses and any profits a promoter thought they might make. So you had to be some kind of an idiot to walk into that with a heroin addict.
Oh.
Right? So we had a band meeting. And instead of clearing the air, what are we going to do? Perhaps in retrospect, postponing the tour. You know, we've had a bunch of your money. We'll get to you. We have an internal band problem. Instead, Keith showed up with his attorney. And as I said in the documentary, it was like being in the fucking Eagles. Like, what does everybody have their own attorneys now? What's going on? And that was it.
Yeah.
Pete Jones went to the airport, called from the airport, fuck this. Keith was kind of fired, and then it was me and John. And we had to very quickly put a band together to go to Japan.
So who was in that band? Because I remember seeing videos of that. You don't have to say if you don't want to.
No, I know who was in it.
Yeah.
Tommy Zvonchek, who I just Facebooked last week. Louis Bernardi on bass, and Joe Guida on guitar. Amazingly talented musicians. Completely not correct for P.I.L.
Sure.
So, but we had like 3 weeks to put a band together. And we auditioned a bunch of interesting people, but these guys nailed the music. We
Yeah.
thought, well, we'll just go to Japan. We have to go to Japan and do this.
Yeah.
And we'll rethink this afterwards. And then we were heavily in debt. And we went to Europe. And whereas we got away with what's called the Holiday Inn version of the band, we got away with that in Japan. It did
It's a
not
great
fly
term.
in Europe.
Oh yeah.
You know where that came from?
No.
I'm sure everybody in the band is like, well, that's when I decided. But I coined the term the Holiday Inn Band because when I went with Bob Miller, our sound guy and producer, to give Louis Bernardi the job, Bob says, yeah, well, let's go. Let's tell him face to face. We'll go and meet him at the Holiday Inn in Passaic, New Jersey. And it was like a drug deal gone bad. It's like Soprano shit. But we walk into the Holiday Inn Passaic, and I'm like looking around, and I see Louis on stage with his cover band in a red combat Clash beret, singing "Rock the Casbah."
Whoa.
And in that moment, I'm like, oh, we're fucked. I mean, we're just fucked. You know, we're so fucked. And it turns out he's good friends with Bob Miller, our sound guy, as is Joe Guida, as is Tommy Zvonček. And the guy, I told Bob this in New York, I felt we were looking to him for independent advice. And whether he realized it or not, he accidentally recommended his close friends.
Sure.
You know, I'm not saying he did that maliciously or deliberately, but that's what the situation was.
Man, so did you play the Screen on the Green show, which was like the first New York performance? There was
The
someone
Ritz show?
Oh, the
you mean?
Ritz, right?
The Ritz,
Yeah, is that what it
the
was?
Riot?
Yeah.
No. So that was, I arrived shortly after that. The phone was still ringing. With the Ritz were just like, where's this? We need $20,000 for the screen.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, nothing to do with me, mate.
Yeah.
So Bow Wow Wow cancelled 2 shows, and Keith agreed to do P.I.L. And
So wait, he was playing with Bow Wow Wow or something?
no,
Oh.
2 nights opened up unexpectedly.
Oh, I see.
And so he said, yeah, we'll do it. Now, he could have called me. We could have done it.
Oh, sure.
Instead, it was a weird art experiment.
Yeah.
Cool. With a record playing, a screen, the band behind the screen, and a drummer. I've forgotten his name. He died recently. Keith found this drummer at a drum shop. Like, he was like a jazz guy.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen footage from the band side of the screen.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, you know, Keith doing it, dong, 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 you
Yeah.
know what Keith does. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you know, telling this guy, like, hit the drums.
Yeah.
And instead of like a ba-bum, 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 you know, some
Yeah.
beat, this guy is like, spow, boo, do that, boo, skibbity, bow, bow, skibbity, bow, bow, skibbity, bow, bow, because he was a jazz drummer.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, and people are starting to get really amped up. And then, as a last resort, I think they put Flowers of Romance on, the vinyl album,
Wow.
and that bought them another 2 or 3 minutes until the record skipped, and people are just like, fuck this.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's the real rock and roll swindle right there, I guess, huh?
yeah. But it's weird as I trace all this stuff back. You know, when Pigface perform, we begin the show behind screens.
Oh, sure.
In silhouette.
Yeah.
And it creates tension. It's really cool. It's like, you know, I wouldn't say for a second I thought up that idea
Sure.
on my own. I saw all the pictures of the weird shadows
Yeah.
and the angles, and it's fucking awesome.
I mean, as a little kid, I was fascinated by reading about that story. You know, I think it's brilliant. So then, like, man, you have this insane career with like playing with some pretty amazing artists. I mean, you dabbled with Ministry and Killing Joke, and among your own stuff too. I mean, it's crazy. So you just never really stopped, you know?
No, I stopped for a little bit. I mean, I remember thinking, look, if I don't want to be in P.I.L, having been to Australia and Japan for the second time with This Is Not a Love Song being a worldwide hit, licensed to Miami Vice, The Order of Death, 7 minutes of music on NBC. If that isn't it for me, then I guess music isn't.
Sure.
So I kind of stopped for maybe a year and then joined Killing Joke over in the UK. And
which you seem very fitting musically, stylistically, or whatever. It seems like.
Well, yeah, but also I absorbed Paul Ferguson's beats into my tribal shit.
Yeah.
And I think that made me a better, more dangerous drummer. And then I had to start managing Killing Joke because it was a catastrophe.
So you were managing it as well.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then
how'd you get to do that?
Well, if I hadn't started managing Killing Joke, it wouldn't have existed for me to play drums.
Huh.
I mean, stuff was happening like, there's a huge problem. We owe 6 months on the equipment storage, but they won't give us the Mirage keyboards, and everything was a fucking crisis.
Yeah.
And they had this guy helping them, and he's like, yeah, don't fucking tell me. I've got 500 T-shirts here. We need storage for the T-shirts and all these flexi discs. There's no fucking money. And I'm like, well, here's an idea. Why don't we sell some fucking flexi discs, dude?
Yeah.
Then you won't have to stack them in the office, and there'll be some money to pay for the storage. What? I just got on the phone, called a couple of one-stops, and I had my label at that point.
Yeah.
And
what year was that then?
89?
Okay.
88? 89.
Yeah.
My label started in 88. And I released the Courtauld Talks, which is a spoken word thing that Jazz and Geordie did. It's kind of interesting with a little bit of percussion. I released that as a double album, and we arranged a US tour. Look, we've got to get over to the States. I keep hearing your music being played. Let's get over there.
Yeah.
And it started to take some shape. So while I was in, and then it gets a bit crazy again. While I was in Killing Joke, we hung out with Al Jorgensen in Chicago, who knew the Killing Joke guys from London. So Al and I connected, and he called me. I was in Miami with Killing Joke. We were hanging out with Skinny Puppy, and he asked me to come and drum with Ministry on a tour, which I didn't leave Killing Joke to do. I took a hiatus. And then at the end of that Ministry tour, I started Pigface. So for a while, I was in Killing Joke, working with Ministry, and started Pigface at the same time. And then Nine Inch Nails, and a lot of Pigface, a lot of stuff with my own label, some music in China. And then I completely take a detour into writing books, teaching, and speaking.
Yeah. So let's talk about your teaching thing. How did that come into play? Because it's pretty impressive in itself.
Thank you. But completely accidental. I went to Columbia College, Chicago, because we were putting 2-bus, 3-band package tours together with Pigface and other artists. 20,000 promotional CDs, 80,000 promotional postcards with 10 different partners. I mean, we were doing some shit. And I heard about internships. So I went to Columbia with a quick presentation. This is why you should give me like 5 interns now. And at the end of the presentation, they're like, when can you start?
Huh.
I'm like, I could take interns now. They're like, no, when could you start teaching?
I don't feel dirty.
So I thought the craziest thing I could do is to say yes. And so I did. And then the first class, everybody's sitting there with this book, and it was Theatrical Touring, 1962. I'm like, we can't use this book. What do you know? So I started to write Tour Smart. And I kind of thought that I would wind things down. You know, I'm 59 now. What was I then? 49? It was 10 or 11 years ago. Got 4 kids, you know. Seemed perfectly reasonable for me to like start winding things up, teach out, you know, teach to the grave, and then Tour Smart took off. I started speaking, and I was delivering these very dry, serious. Here's this information, speeches, and I'm like, God, this isn't. People need to be here and engaged, how can I do that? So I started to fuck around within that PowerPoint format.
Yeah.
Within that, throwing things at people, which is stuff I did as a punk.
Yeah.
We used to throw bananas at the audience with Brian Brain, and now I throw muffins. It's like
Yeah.
the same shit, different context. And that just started building up. Like, so this is my 4th book that I'm working on. I successfully pledged campaign. It's still going on. I'm going to Medellin in a month, Toronto, Sao Paulo, Santiago, Manchester, London, Edinburgh, Glasgow.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Wow.
So, but now I've kind of, whereas the traditional guy, which I don't know what part of me that is, would say to me, "You're doing a little bit much. Calm it down." So this 4 days in LA, I did 2 classes for Kevin Lyman at USC on Tuesday, DIY marketing and branding. I played drums with Ruby on Wednesday night at Echo. That's Leslie Rankine from Silverfish. She's fucking amazing. Last night I showed up at Stories and did 20 minutes just from the hip,
Wow.
which was kind of made me nervous. I'm like, okay, I like this. And tonight I'm doing this P.I.L presentation. Tomorrow I drum with Ruby at DNA in San Francisco.
Wow.
And Sunday afternoon I'm doing this in a rehearsal room, like an invitation-only thing. And instead of me being tired, I'm actually fueled.
Sure.
It's like, and so I'm having this kind of like 59-year-old, "Hey, Martin, turns out you're a drummer," like moment.
Yeah.
And the more I drum, the more I want to drum, and I'm enjoying that. So I'm trying, but I love writing. I'm starting to do this thing, which isn't going to communicate through the microphone. I'm starting to take the ideas and mix them up a little bit like it's a movie, because movies aren't linear. So I'm mixing my stories up a little bit and enjoying that storytelling thing that I do on NPR and developing that. And
Is that new, the NPR podcast?
No, I've been doing that for a couple of years with Bob Boylan.
Okay.
I'll tell a story. It's called the Martin Atkins Minute.
Yeah.
And I keep seeing Bob, and I need to sit down and do some more of those for him. But I'm trying to be that person. Because for a while I'm like, fuck the drums. That's old and lame, you know? But I hit the drums so hard, still, that it's not like, oh, Martin doesn't have it, right? Which would be horrible, right? And I'm sure at some point things will stop working, you know, right? And I think that would just be really sad. Like me on stage going, "Look out, LA!"
Yeah, sure.
You know, tambourine, you know. But I did this random session up in Toronto. I just tweeted, these guys did a P.I.L cover. I'm like, this needs some fucking drums, you assholes. It's like some drum machine bubbling along. And they're like, well, we can't afford, I'm like, well, I'm not asking you to pay me, because you couldn't afford me anyway.
Yeah.
How dare you? How dare you say you can't? Of course you can't afford me. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
And there's this great story. I've forgotten the guy's name. They're called Love Tapper is the name of the band. He was kind of, I think, a little bit condescending. So they set up this kit. Not in that way, he's very respectful. But I set up the kit, and just before I started to check it, he describes me going, "Hey, whoa, watch out. Watch out, I'm about to hit the drums." And he's like, "Yeah? Fuck you, what are you, fuck you? What are you, what?" And then I started to hit the drums, and he was just like, they said the sound pressure levels were just insane.
Yeah.
So I want to keep doing that.
It's crazy because you have to grab that?
No, it's okay.
It's so weird because, like, I think before we had met, I think P.I.L had like got back together, and I was like, why are these? You know, who are like? I didn't really know who was in it. I just heard there was a guy from Spice Girls in it, and I was a little confused, and I was like, well, that's weird. Why would they not get Martin? And then, I guess, naively thinking like, oh, maybe he's just like not playing anymore or whatever. And so however it worked out when we did that improv session in San Diego, like as soon as you started playing, I was just like, Jesus fucking Christ, this guy is like, first of all, you're playing in a suit with wearing Doc Martens and like beating the hell out of this drum kit, and I felt bad for the drum set. And dude, I felt
bad. I like that.
I mean, I
felt bad for the drum set.
I'm pretty lucky to play with the drummers that I get to play with, so I was like, oh, dude, this guy is on that fucked up level, like still, like it's just beyond me. So like, why would you not go and do it again? Like, why is there not a new thing?
Well, I mean, that's complicated. First off, drummers don't leave singers' bands.
What do you mean by that?
Drummers don't leave singers' bands.
Okay.
So just imagine being John. And second trip to Japan, Australia, This Is Not a Love Song, Miami Vice, I'm out.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Sure.
Right, so, and if you see a little bit of the context in the P.I.L documentary about John and his upbringing, he was very sick, didn't recognize his family, and so things got very close-knit. And I thought I'd left P.I.L. I think John will always think that I absolutely betrayed him.
Huh. Okay.
Right? Because if P.I.L is John, and I don't know that it is, but if he thinks it is, and I left it, I betrayed him.
Okay.
And I get that.
That makes sense why you wouldn't be in P.I.L now, because that's not your, I guess it's not your decision. But what about like, are you fully do you have like a fully active band now? And my question is, if you don't, why would you not just not recreate P.I.L, but like make a modern day thing, like of something as righteous as that
but that was about so many other things other than the music. It was the time, it was the context, it was it was that show at the Olympic where everything just went
But isn't there always a time and always a context to everything?
Yes, but but back then there was right now there are probably 80 to 8,000 mini scenes of like fucking glitch this and K-pop that and fucking what.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, there was rock, then there was punk, and then there was like goth, post-punk, new romantic. There were fucking, everybody was on the same page. So everybody was on the same page, turning the page. Now everybody's on a different page. If you're in a minivan with 10 people, you're like, hey, what a great song. And you turn around because you listen to the radio and somebody else is in the back playing fucking some bullshit. And somebody else is like, yeah, we're listening to something else.
Yeah.
Whereas back then, where were you when Kennedy was shot? And people were like, oh, they were doing something. And these moments happened in mass media. Now everything's fragmented. So how can you turn the page when some people don't even have a book to turn the page.
Sure.
They're listening to. That's what I mean about the context.
I understand. Huh.
It was more dangerous to more people. So when we played to nearly 10,000 people at the Olympic, there was a bunch of people who wanted to see the Pistols. There was a bunch of people who bandstand and other things that. We only did bandstand the day before, so that they hadn't seen it. But there was a time where all the stuff was bubbling up.
Sure.
And it was dangerous.
There was tension.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened a lot, that I try and talk about this sometimes, but it just comes to the surface. We were on stage with German Shepherds in Fukuoka. And it wasn't like, oh, I'll never forget. It was like, yeah, LA was police helicopters. The crowd was maced, and riot police on horseback. My diary entry for Atlanta, my 4th show with the band, 16 cop cars outside.
Yeah.
And Ted Cohen will say, "Oh yeah, that was spillover from the Pistol show in Atlanta." I mean, there was fucking shit, and no security. We did the Olympic without any security, and it was just dangerous. So to try and recreate that, I don't know.
But maybe you shouldn't have to recreate it. Maybe there's a natural evolution you can take from that and create the new thing, like birth something that hasn't happened.
Well, so I'm doing this thing with Leslie. She has this thing called Ruby, which is her. She does all these electronics, and people make weird boxes for her to jam with. And I put just slam drums over the top. And I really like that. It's just me and her. And there's no bullshit or inter-band. Well, we're not a band. It's two of us.
Yeah.
And I just like sitting behind her. She sings like an angel and says cunt a lot. I just like sitting behind her and just playing my drums in that environment.
Yeah.
So, having said all of that, would I do a P.I.L show? Yeah. 4 songs, 1 show. I'd love to do that.
But I don't even really mean a P.I.L show. I mean, like just a new band, with new players. But
okay. So what? Like, why am I not just drumming?
Well, not just drumming, but like why? Like it's like you had this thing that like sort of helped the world define you. Like then you like it's like I don't want to use like Johnny as a reference point, but like he had the Sex Pistols, then he started P.I.L. I feel like he should start something totally new after that. I mean, I guess he tried, but like so anyhow, like artists just move on, or they're like the Rolling Stones and they just keep doing the same shit. Like you it's not like you've lost it. Obviously, you fucking rip on drums still. Like so, why? I just feel like there's a demand like for what you do, and you could put something out there and people would resonate with that. And yeah, like maybe it's not like it was for P.I.L and in the early days and with that sort of tension, but man, this world's fucked in a whole other way, and like you can feed off of that. You can use that as something.
Well, so for me, I just have my studio rewired. I have my analog tape machines and bizarre Eventide shit that like, one of my Eventides went down and this guy like sent me a video of him repairing it. He found the chip that you can't find at a school that was closing down. There's this thing that I used to glitch beats with. And I'm going to do that. I'm playing drums with Leslie. And I like the arc of all of this. Like I was in Barcelona speaking. And Pete Shelley was there, and we were just talking. He was a big P.I.L fan. I'm a huge Buzzcocks fan. And we were like, well, we should jam.
Yeah.
I'm like, should we jam or should we just play Buzzcocks songs? And we just jammed in this basement. And the thing I enjoyed about that is people were like, it was like I was doing a magic trick where this guy who'd been speaking for 5 years and here's my new book. Oh, here comes Martin with his new book. Pulls a pair of drumsticks out of his pocket and just like nails this stuff. I like that. I like that stuff. And so I think I'm really happy that I stumbled back into it and that Leslie asked me to do a few things. Because it's kind of, I think we might do something for a few weeks next year. And it's like, okay. And we're talking about doing another Pigface show next year, like one, because that's just ridiculous. So I have a band. It's called Pigface.
Yeah, sure, but it's not active or.
Well, we did a show in 2016.
Okay. One show.
Yeah.
Right,
but we had 9 drummers on stage. It's not like
okay.
It's but you could say it's not about me and the drums. It's about me and everything but the drums. It's about me proving my logistical prowess, making it happen. 9 kits, we'll go to and in fact at the end of the show, I was in the audience. There's like people shooting video, and I'm like and I go and watch the band, which is great. And then I saw myself. I'm like, oh, that looks like the back of my head. And I'm like, yeah. So I have tremendous fun with all of this stuff. But I think I'm finding this smaller, more intimate release of all of that stuff for me.
Yeah. So there is a possibility of recreating Well, you said the 4 songs. You said 4 songs referring to Flowers of Romance or something, or
No, I would be lying if I said, if John called and said, "Will you come on stage and do a couple of songs?" Fuck you.
Sure.
I'd be like, "Yeah, I'd love to do 3 songs, 1 show." Same with Killing Joke.
Yeah.
Fucking love that band.
Yeah.
You know, I saw them in New York, and I'd love to be like, Love Like Blood.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah,
doing that.
yeah.
You know, but I mean that's not my call to make.
Huh.
And I think you might say, to a certain extent, I'm not helping the possibility of that happening by having events like the one I'm having this evening.
How so?
Because I don't think that my version of events is, nor should it be, the same as John's.
Sure. But it was a really weird thing that you said about how, like, drummers don't leave singers' bands. But, like, I think that you, as Martin Atkins, can be the one to like harness other instruments, other musicians, another singer, like, for something else, like, and they wouldn't leave your band. You know, it's, I don't know, like, I feel like it's a weird thing to kind of, this might be an interesting thing, because I feel like people place too much emphasis on the singer or the vocalist or the front person, which I don't it's not, like, always accurate, you know. I mean,
well, that's something. So I got my master's degree in January, and I didn't think there was any use in any of that. I just do it because I don't like to be fucked with at the academic level, you know, because it's like, I've got a Grammy and I did all this stuff, and sometimes that upsets academics. So they get and where's your master's degree? Oh, you don't have a master's degree. Oh, well, right. But so I got my master's degree. So I'm like, yeah, I've got a master's degree and a Grammy and this and this. So fuck off. But I have ideas and opinions and memories and my diaries for my book. But then I'm also going before and after my time to seek validation or confirmation of things that I've thought. So the album after me, Bill Laswell describes that recording process.
are you on any of that?
No.
Nothing at all, huh?
No. It's Ginger Baker and Tony Williams from Chic.
Yeah.
And Bill Laswell describes that, we had these fully finished songs. We didn't know if they were going to be used for P.I.L. So he's written these songs.
Who? He wrote them?
Bill Laswell,
Oh, okay.
And John would walk in the studio, sing, and leave, and then they'd mix. So that's exactly my experience with John.
Yeah.
So it's not just me saying this is my version of the events. It's like, actually, here's this other, you can go to these other sources for the same thing years later.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, there was some good, in my opinion, there's some good songs on that record, but it's, I mean, I remember, like, kind of being old enough to go see P.I.L. when 9 came out, and it was horrible. It was nothing.
Yeah, a lot of people say 9 was terrible.
It was the worst thing.
When album came out, I'm like, oh fuck!
There was some good
Ginger
shit on it.
Baker's replacement. I want to rejoin. You know.
Yeah.
Tony Williams, like, oh fuck, and then the packaging comes out, album, cassette, poster,
Yeah.
T-shirt. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh fuck,
Yeah.
this is genius. And then the songs are really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw them on that tour too.
On album.
Yeah.
I missed it because I was just too young. But when not to harp on it, but I saw that it was like, it was a weird thing to kind of be, when I think I was 12 or 13, I saw them play on the 9 tour with New Order and Sugar Cubes.
Yeah.
And it was easily the worst out of the bunch. And I think De La Soul played too. So it was just like, and I went there because I was a fan of P.I.L. and it was such a bummer. And I realized at that point that, like, it's gone. It's not a thing, you know.
Well, I think that, so one of the things I'm trying to get to for me in all of this is not a he said, whatever. It's like, well, what was this? And I think one of the things I learned, massive lesson, just by observing, is that I think John naturally doesn't want any bullshit from anybody he's working with. Right? Bass player from the Spice Girls.
Yo, tell you what I want, what I really, really want.
Fantastic bass player.
Yeah.
Is he going to give John some lip? Is he fuck? Of course he isn't.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with Olin. Bruce
Yeah.
is a great
Yeah,
drummer,
yeah.
but he's not going to get into it with John.
Yeah.
Me, I would.
Yeah.
Wobble would. Keith would.
Yeah.
Everybody would. And so it makes perfect sense to not want to have. I'm not going to pay someone who's going to fucking backchat me.
Sure.
But it's exactly what you should be paying for.
Yeah.
That's the priceless shit. Is somebody will say, spinach in your teeth, mate.
Sure.
You know, or whatever the metaphorical version, the musical version of that is, when you hire a bunch of people to comply, whether it's overt or covert or spoken or not, you lose the thing that makes a band in the first place.
And you can't have self-criticism or constructive criticism, you know, which it's a bummer. Yeah, I mean, it is a good band live, but it's a cover band, you know, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
What now then? Like, you're gonna continue this, put out more books?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying so I'm workshopping my book tonight. And some people don't understand. Well, when you finish the book, by all means, come back. Look, yeah, okay, right? I'm workshopping ideas and feeling the vibe from people who are coming, who were involved. Changes the things that I'm presenting and the things that I think about. I have a Killing Joke book to do. I need to do something with the music that I've accumulated, that I've recorded. I'm getting back in the studio. I'm reworking the music business program at Millikan University. Working on some new classes that cross over into sports and fitness and entrepreneurial business, which is really interesting to me. I'm working with Dark Matter Coffee. They do my Get the Fuck Out of Bed coffee.
Yeah.
And they're so inspirational to me. They release vinyl, cassettes. They're doing a FX pedal with Kurt Hammett. It's insane.
Whoa, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And I just spoke with Maynard's crew. I'm going to go down to Jerome and do this, I think, at the store down in Jerome, Arizona, and maybe do some other stuff and learn about Singer with a vineyard and another band and a store that incorporates a barber shop and screen printing, because that's what I have. You know, these broad, multi-connected, crazy businesses, as do you.
Sure.
Right? This is the new thing for me. It's like, you know, you don't concentrate on one thing. Do 10.
Yeah.
And the release, the relief, the release, the liberation that I'm finding by doing all of that, it's kind of awesome.
But all the 10 things can also sort of coincide and affect each other in a good way, you know, or accommodate each other, or you know.
That's when it gets stellar. Yeah. Like when that's 1 + 1 = 11.
Yeah.
Like when Dark Matter Coffee will help fly me to Tokyo.
Yeah.
Right. So we launched my coffee in Tokyo. I was there last week, and I thought I want to do something awesome for the people who've donated to my pledge campaign. Surprise them. I sent them all a postcard from Tokyo.
Yeah.
And which arrived a couple of people's birthdays, which was awesome. But also the anniversary of Live in Tokyo from 35 years ago, which I didn't think through.
Sure.
It was just like, whoa. And then people just freak out because they weren't supposed to get that.
Yeah.
People get so uptight about, well, what exactly am I going to get? And when you give them something that wasn't in the fucking deal, it's easy to freak people out.
There's one thing that I just want to bring up that real quick that stuck with me is I remember when we first met, or maybe I think maybe it's like, we did that lecture in San Diego, and you were saying how like going on tour, and as long as you can win over 2 people a night, that's enough. And I think that's such a rad thing to hold on to, because man, people get full of their own shit, and like 2 is not anything to most people, but I don't know. That's something that resonated with me. So I just want to say, like, that's a rad point that you're putting out there.
Well, but that's it.
Yeah.
You know, if you can deal with the person who's in front of you and leave a venue with 2 fans, then the only thing you have to do is keep going for 5 years, and then you know, and that's a message of hope.
Yeah.
You know, some people, oh fuck that.
Yeah.
We're going to be huge tomorrow. You're not.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
I met this guy who survived like 4 different kinds of cancer. I hope he's still around. Paul Stein, I think his name is. He said, baby steps are battering rams. I'm like, fuck. I just love that. Thank you.
Thank you, man. That's great.
So there you have it, episode 9 of the Cult and Culture podcast with Martin Atkins. Thanks for tuning in, and pay attention to our upcoming podcast, and check out Martin Atkins on the Planet B album, and what else?
Everything else he's doing.
Yeah, everything else that guy's doing. You can hear all of our podcasts on 31G's SoundCloud and also on iTunes. 31G iTunes podcast. Thank you very much.
Later.
Planet B.
Cult and Culture is a Ruinous Media podcast, proudly sponsored by Earthquaker Devices, Heartwork Coffee, Fender, and Diodario.
Planet B.